Every generation has a machine that quietly redefines what lasting quality means, something built not for trends or quarterly goals, but for permanence. It is the kind of engineering that feels deliberate, the kind that refuses to age even when the world around it does. Before most of us knew what digital dashboards or aluminum chassis meant, there was a moment when precision and patience ruled the design studio. In that moment, one car emerged as a standard of integrity, comfort, and endurance. Today, we are revisiting that legend, a sedan so meticulously built that it became known as nearly unbreakable, setting a benchmark that its own successors struggled to reach. Stay with me, because we are about to explore how one over-engineered experiment became a cult classic admired decades later. Like the video if you love timeless machines, subscribe for more deep dives into automotive icons, and comment below which car or series you want to see next. The Mercedes-Benz W124 300e from 1986 did not arrive with fireworks or fanfare, it arrived with quiet confidence. At first glance, it looked restrained compared to the angular sedans of the decade. Yet beneath that modest exterior was one of the most advanced and carefully constructed cars of its time. The W124 series represented the height of Mercedes-Benz philosophy before the brand began to chase cost efficiency. It was the final expression of an era when engineers dictated design, not accountants. To understand why the 300e matters, you have to understand the Mercedes mindset of the mid-1980s. Germany was prosperous, and the automaker saw its mission as creating vehicles that could last for decades, not merely years. The 300e, positioned as the core of the E-Class lineage, was engineered for that mission in every detail. The development program started years before the public saw the car. Engineers obsessed over aerodynamics, safety, and mechanical longevity, with targets that bordered on obsessive. They wanted a car that could cruise at autobahn speeds all day without fatigue or noise, a car that would still feel new after hundreds of thousands of miles. To achieve that, they studied airflow patterns with early computer simulations and extensive wind tunnel testing. The result was a sedan with a drag coefficient as low as 0.28, nearly unheard of for a four-door at the time. That meant better fuel economy, quieter cabins, and greater stability at speed. But Mercedes did not stop with the shell. They built the structure from high-strength steel, creating a rigid safety cell that still feels solid decades later. Even the doors closed with the satisfying precision that became a brand hallmark. The W124 300ES chassis design blended comfort with durability in a way few cars could replicate. It used a sophisticated multi-link rear suspension, engineered not for cost but for balance and predictability. The system allowed the car to glide over uneven roads while maintaining control through corners, something reviewers of the time described as both serene and confident. Power came from the M103 inline-six engine, a 3.0-liter masterpiece that delivered around 177 horsepower. By modern standards, those numbers might seem modest, but the way it delivered them was remarkable. Smooth, refined, and endlessly tractable, the M103 became known for its ability to run 500,000 miles with proper care. It was not uncommon to find taxis in Europe that exceeded that figure without ever needing a major rebuild. Inside, the W124 300e revealed another layer of Mercedes thinking. The cabin design prioritized clarity and ergonomics. Every switch had a deliberate feel, every surface was built to resist wear. The seats were firm yet supportive, designed for long-distance comfort rather than soft luxury. Materials like solid wood trim and dense carpeting reflected a focus on endurance rather than show. There was no gimmickry, just precision. Mercedes engineers also integrated early forms of safety technology that would later define modern vehicles. The body was designed with crumple zones that absorbed impact energy, protecting occupants in ways few rivals could match. Optional systems like anti-lock brakes and airbags placed the 300e years ahead of many competitors. What made this even more impressive was how quietly Mercedes achieved it. There were no flashy ad campaigns about technology or speed. The 300e simply did what it was built to do, deliver uncompromising quality and reliability. Customers who bought one in 1986 were not looking for excitement, they were looking for trust. And trust is exactly what they got. Yet beneath all the polish and engineering perfection, a subtle shift was already happening inside Mercedes-Benz. The cost of building such a car was astronomical. Each W124 required hours of labor and expensive materials, making it difficult for the company to maintain profit margins. While customers adored the quality, the accountants were growing uneasy. This internal tension between craftsmanship and cost would soon define the next chapter in the 300ES story. As the company looked toward the 1990s, the world was changing rapidly. New competitors emerged, global markets expanded, and efficiency became the watchword of every major manufacturer. Mercedes faced a decision: continue building cars like the W124 300e and risk profitability, or evolve into something more sustainable for the new era. That decision would lead to a fundamental change in how Mercedes-Benz defined its vehicles. The result would affect not only the company's future lineup but also how enthusiasts later viewed the W124 itself. The next part of our story dives into that transformation, how Mercedes' pursuit of perfection met the realities of a changing world, and how the W124 300e became the reluctant symbol of an era that could never be repeated. The Mercedes-Benz W124 300e entered the 1990s as a benchmark of quality, but also as a warning. Its excellence had proven costly, and the very traits that made it exceptional were becoming unsustainable in a market shifting toward cost control and rapid innovation. Mercedes-Benz engineers, proud of what they had built, began facing new directives. The company could no longer justify the extraordinary expense of overbuilding every component, and yet its customers now expected nothing less. That conflict defines much of the 300ES legacy. The car represented a philosophy that prized longevity over convenience, precision over flash. But as global competition intensified, especially from Japanese luxury brands and more affordable European entries, Mercedes-Benz realized the old methods would not carry them through the next decade. To maintain its reputation for excellence, the company needed to evolve. Still, the W124 300e remained the purest expression of Mercedes' traditional values. Every piece of its engineering reflected a refusal to compromise. The self-leveling suspension option, for example, maintained a consistent ride height under any load, an innovation more common in high-end limousines than mid-size sedans. Even the wiring harnesses used premium-grade insulation to prevent cracking and corrosion. This attention to detail seemed almost obsessive, yet it was what defined the car's character. Enthusiasts began to notice that while newer models added more technology, they rarely matched the 300ES feel of mechanical integrity. It was solid in a way few vehicles ever are, exuding confidence with every mile. The car's quiet competence made it the ideal companion for professionals, diplomats, and families who valued durability and dignity over flash and speed. Meanwhile, Mercedes-Benz introduced updates to keep the 300e relevant. Later versions gained new engines, refined transmissions, and subtle styling changes. Yet at its core, the design philosophy never wavered. It was still a machine built for decades of service. Owners reported stories of 300ES surviving harsh climates, high mileage commutes, and even neglect that would have sidelined lesser vehicles. The mechanical honesty of the W124 became its greatest strength, and over time, its defining myth. For engineers, the car represented the culmination of decades of experimentation in safety and structure. The safety cell concept, first introduced in earlier Mercedes sedans, was perfected here. In controlled tests, the W124's cabin maintained integrity under severe stress, preserving occupant space with remarkable precision. The front and rear zones absorbed impact energy through calculated deformation, a design that became industry standard in years to follow. But while the W124 300e was a triumph of design, it was also a turning point. The costs associated with such precision were difficult to sustain as regulations tightened and markets expanded. Mercedes-Benz executives began developing new strategies to make cars more profitable without compromising quality entirely. The successor, the W210, would signal this shift. It was lighter, more efficient, and less expensive to produce, yet many longtime owners felt it lacked the overbuilt soul of the W124. That perception only grew stronger as time passed. The W124 300e was suddenly seen not just as a great car, but as the last great car of its kind. Mechanics praised its simplicity and accessibility. Collectors started to take notice. What once was a common executive sedan began its transformation into a cult classic. The rise of online communities in the 2000s accelerated that process. Forums and enthusiast groups emerged, trading repair guides and sourcing original parts. Owners proudly posted photos of odometers reading 300,000 miles or more. The 300e had crossed from transportation into legend. Its reputation even influenced how later Mercedes models were judged. Every new generation was inevitably compared to the W124. Every claim of improved quality faced skepticism from those who remembered the old ways. It became a symbol of engineering integrity in a world increasingly driven by marketing and software. Yet nostalgia alone cannot explain the 300es endurance. Its appeal lies in how it connects driver and machine. There is a mechanical honesty in the way the steering communicates, in how the suspension absorbs imperfections without isolating the driver. It feels deliberate, purposeful, unhurried. It is not about performance in numbers but performance in experience. That quality has helped the car retain relevance even decades later. Restored examples are sought after not because they are fast or flashy, but because they represent something rare, a human-centered approach to engineering. Every piece of the W124 300e tells a story about what happens when craftsmanship outweighs compromise. Mercedes-Benz could not sustain that philosophy forever, but it left behind a blueprint that continues to inspire. As we look deeper into how the 300es legend grew after production ended, we begin to see how a once practical sedan evolved into a cultural statement. The next segment explores how this car became a bridge between generations, a collector's favorite, and a lasting reminder of what timeless design truly means. The Mercedes-Benz W124 300e did not fade quietly into retirement, it evolved into a symbol. Long after production ended, the car developed a second life among enthusiasts, collectors, and everyday drivers who recognized something exceptional in its DNA. In an era when most cars are designed to be replaced, the 300e endures. It represents permanence in a disposable age. The story of how that happened is as much cultural as mechanical. Throughout the late 1990s and early 2000s, thousands of W124s continued their daily duties around the world. They became taxis in Europe, executive shuttles in Asia, and family hand-me-downs in America. While most cars would have succumbed to wear or neglect, the 300e kept running with minimal drama. Mechanics appreciated it because it could be repaired without exotic tools or electronics. Owners loved it because it simply refused to give up. This combination of resilience and simplicity became the foundation of its cult following. Online forums and social media amplified that reputation, connecting people across continents through shared admiration. Stories of 300es with astronomical mileage began to circulate. Each one seemed to validate the belief that Mercedes-Benz once built something truly indestructible. The car's understated design aged gracefully, further enhancing its appeal. Unlike more flamboyant luxury sedans, the W124 300e was never tied to a particular trend. It could blend into any setting, whether parked outside a suburban home or gliding through city streets. That subtlety gave it a timeless quality that newer cars often lack. As the collector market matured, the W124 300e began appearing at classic car events, restored to pristine condition by passionate owners. Restoration specialists recognized that the car's durable construction made it ideal for preservation. Many examples still retain their original engines and interiors, proof of how well they were built. Even when modern restoration techniques are applied, the heart of the car remains the same: solid, honest engineering. The cult around the W124 also grew from contrast. As newer luxury cars became more dependent on software, digital interfaces, and lightweight materials, enthusiasts longed for something tangible. The 300e provided exactly that. It reminded people of a time when quality could be felt through the steering wheel, not downloaded through an update. In conversations about long-term reliability, the car became a benchmark. When reviewers test a new luxury sedan today, they often mention the W124 as a reference point for durability and refinement. It set a standard that still lingers in the collective memory of the automotive world. But perhaps the most fascinating part of the W124 300ES legacy is how it transcends brand loyalty. Even those who do not usually admire German engineering acknowledge its impact. It stands for a universal ideal, the pursuit of perfection for its own sake. That ideal has inspired restorers, designers, and even rival manufacturers. In design schools, the W124 is still studied for its proportions and aerodynamic balance. In engineering circles, it remains an example of how thoughtful design can achieve lasting excellence without excessive complexity. Every element, from the thick door seals to the symmetrical dashboard, reflects a level of intent rarely seen today. The 300ES continuing relevance also lies in how it redefines luxury. It proved that true luxury is not always about novelty or gadgets. It can be about durability, silence, and the assurance that every part is doing its job perfectly. That philosophy resonates strongly in an age of rapid technological turnover. To drive a W124 300e now is to experience a form of mechanical honesty that feels increasingly rare. It does not overwhelm with features, it impresses with balance and restraint. The car's composure on the road, its measured acceleration, and its predictable handling remind us that satisfaction can come from precision rather than excess. In that sense, it is more than a vehicle, it is a statement about priorities. Enthusiasts often describe owning one as a grounding experience. It connects them to an era when engineering served purpose rather than marketing. That connection is part nostalgia, part respect, and entirely human. Because at its core, the Mercedes-Benz W124 300e is not just admired for lasting, it is admired for what it represents: the belief that something built with care can outlive its makers. The car's story continues to evolve as more are restored and shared across new generations. Younger enthusiasts, many of whom were not alive when the car debuted, are rediscovering it through digital media. They see in it an antidote to disposable design, a reminder that progress does not always mean better. As the W124 community grows, the car's reputation becomes self-sustaining, a living legend maintained by those who understand its significance. Its value is no longer measured in horsepower or market price, but in the sense of continuity it offers. It stands as proof that excellence, when pursued without compromise, never goes out of style. And that enduring truth brings us to the final reflection on what the W124 300e has taught the world, and what it still has to say in a time obsessed with speed, screens, and constant change. The Mercedes-Benz W124 300e from 1986 closes its story not as a relic, but as a reminder. When it first appeared, it represented the height of precision engineering. Today, it represents something deeper. It is a symbol of how timeless quality survives every trend and transition. In its quiet confidence, it teaches that true greatness does not need to announce itself. The W124 300ES continued relevance shows that engineering integrity leaves a longer legacy than marketing ever can. It is the car that outlasted its own generation, not through luck but through intention. Every choice in its design, from the robust inline-six to the perfectly balanced suspension, was guided by a belief that the best way to predict the future was to overbuild for it. Decades later, that philosophy feels radical again. As automakers rush toward electrification and digitalization, the 300e stands as a mechanical sanctuary, a place where everything works because it was designed to. It offers a calmness modern vehicles rarely achieve. even in motion, it feels grounded, deliberate, and sure of itself. That composure is not nostalgia, it is evidence. It proves that technology and soul can coexist when engineers are given the freedom to care. The 300e also highlights the balance between progress and preservation. Without innovation, the industry stalls; without craftsmanship, it loses its essence. Mercedes-Benz managed to capture both, if only for a brief, shining moment. The W124 300e embodies that equilibrium. It was forward-looking in its aerodynamics and safety systems, yet deeply traditional in its build philosophy. That duality makes it relevant to every discussion about what the future of automotive design should value. For enthusiasts, it is more than a collectible, it is a teacher. It reminds us that longevity is the truest form of luxury. That the most meaningful technology is invisible, working quietly in service of the driver. That comfort and confidence are not just sensations, but consequences of thoughtful design. And above all, it reminds us that when something is made with genuine intent, it does not age, it matures. So whether you admire it from afar or are lucky enough to drive one, the Mercedes-Benz W124 300e continues to offer lessons. It asks us to slow down, to notice the details, and to appreciate the value of permanence in a world that constantly changes. Its legend was not created by marketing slogans or celebrity endorsements. It was earned mile by mile, through the simple act of doing everything right. That is why the W124 300e remains one of the most respected sedans ever built. It has transcended its badge to become a universal benchmark for integrity. And as long as roads exist, its story will continue wherever reliability, balance, and purpose still matter. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Mercedes-Benz W124 300e, leave a like, subscribe for future explorations of automotive legends, and tell us which model you want to see next. Because every great machine has a story, and some, like this one, never truly end.